Now.
There we go.
Now we are live. Hey,
Hello,
what's
everybody.
going on?
Hello. Nice to meet you, Rob. I really loved your book.
And I loved yours, Kevin. Fantastic. Very, very different books, but I think we both got a real kick out of each other's stuff.
And of course, I said the wrong name, Jackson. So
that's okay. Jackson Rob, I get confused. For anybody watching, I am Jackson Ford, but the real name is Rob Buffard. I have a pseudonym. Kevin does not. Kevin, your real name is your real name. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. Glad I got that sorted. I should introduce you. Actually, we should introduce each other.
Yes.
Kevin Hearne is the New York Times bestselling author of the Iron Druid Chronicles, the Ink and Sigil series, the latest book of that's just come out and it's fabulous, the Seven Kennings trilogy, and co-author of the Tales of Pell with Delilah S. Dawson. He hugs trees and rocks out to heavy metal and thinks tacos are a pretty nifty idea, in that he is completely correct. He likes posting nature photos on Instagram and planning road trips he can't possibly take right now, and that hits quite close to home.
Yes, indeed. And everybody, this is Jackson Ford. He is the author of the Frost Files series, which I have just finished the first one of, and it's awesome. Including The Girl Who Could Move Shit with Her Mind. That's the said book. Random Shit Flying Through the Air, and Eye of the Shitstorm. He is a South African author who lives in Vancouver, British Columbia, because you can't snowboard in Johannesburg. Before he was an author, he was a journalist who wrote for The Guardian and Wired magazine, among many others. And so I am super pleased and privileged to be here with him today.
Likewise, this is going to be fun. So a couple of quick housekeeping things. Of anybody who's joined us, you can ask us questions. That is the main point of this event. You can submit your questions using the Ask a Question link at the bottom of the screen, and you can also vote on your favorite questions. We'll be answering the ones that get the most votes first. There should also be a green button on the screen that will open to a new window with links to buy both of our books from retailers in the US and the UK. And if you need to duck out at any point and you want to catch up on what you missed, this event is being recorded and you can replay it in full after the event is over. I'm really looking forward to this. This should be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And I wanted to let you know, like, I get scared of buy buttons sometimes because, like, if I click it, I'm afraid that, I will lose what I'm doing. And apparently this is supposed to work so that if you click the buy button, it will open a new window without banishing us to the ether. So you could do that and kind of multitask maybe a little bit. And I was going to say that, well, first of all, before we talk about the book that I read, Jackson, what's your newest book that you have out right now?
All right, so I can reach back here. The newest book is this. It is called Eye of the Shitstorm. It is the third book in the Frost Files series, chronicling the events of psychokinetic government agent Tegan Frost, who doesn't want to be a psychokinetic government agent. She just wants to be a chef, but life keeps getting in the way. It came out a couple of months ago, and it's not the end. This isn't a trilogy. This series isn't a trilogy. It's an ongoing series. Book 4 is out next year, but for now, this is the latest one. Tell us about your book as well, Kevin.
My latest release is Paper in Blood, and that's the second book in the Ink and Sigil series. I've been super happy hearing from everybody who's been enjoying it so far, because it actually features the return of Atticus and Oberon from the Iron Druid Chronicles. So the Ink and Sigil series is in the Iron Druid Chronicles world, but you do not have to have read the Iron Druid Chronicles to appreciate the Ink and Sigil stuff. And you could probably testify to that, since you started with Paper and Blood and you haven't read my other stuff before, so you just dove right in. And so, yeah, that's what I've got kind of got going on at the moment. And I've got more of that on the way, and more of my epic fantasy stuff on the way too.
I can actually, having jumped into that second one, I was very grateful that at the front of the book you put a previously on, kind of talking about the events of the first book. And so for someone new coming into the series like me, that was massively helpful. So thank you. Speaking of things at the front of the book, and while we wait for a few audience questions to roll in, I have a question for you, because one of the things that you also do at the front of the book is an explanation of how words and names are pronounced in your book. You have a lot of Gaelic and a lot of Celtic. I hope I got those right, but you have a lot of terms that are not English in your books. You've clearly got a fascination with languages and linguistics. So I've got a two-part question for you. The first is, where does this fascination come from? And the second is, why do you think readers have responded so well to this kind of explanation of pronunciations at the start of your books? Because you could view it as a barrier to entry, like something you have to learn before you read these books, but it never feels like a barrier to entry. It feels quite essential. So there's obviously something to it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I used to be an English teacher, and I taught high school for 17 years. And so I was a little bit in that to begin with. And then one of the books I had to teach was Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, which has, all kinds of problems with it. But one of the things that Mark Twain did, if you look at the beginning of his book, he has a tiny little author's note about how he has attempted to faithfully reproduce the speech of several different Southern dialects, but he doesn't break it down. But then you start reading it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a heck of a lot of work, and I wish I knew what was going on here. And that becomes a serious barrier to understanding. So I thought that if I wanted to do some dialects in my book, instead of trying to reproduce everything faithfully and phonetically, which you could really get deep into that if you wanted to do Scots, that you could be spelling stuff all over the place, and that would really slow people down. So what I thought I would do is, I'm just going to do a few words, a few of the main words here and there that you see quite often to give the flavor of the speech to people and hopefully not slow them down. And then a few bonus fun little slang terms, because people just enjoy learning those. And then it's always a thing where I provide the pronunciation just in case you want to do it right. How you do it in your head. I'm not a judgy person who's like, oh, you said that wrong. Go to grammar prison. I'm not that kind of guy. I don't care. I'm happy you're enjoying the story. So I just do that for folks who really enjoy that kind of thing. And if they want to skip it and just dive in, that's cool too. So. That's why I do it. I can't say speak for everybody like why it's done well with them, but there's a lot of people who listen to it on audio and they appreciate the audio narrator performance. So he has to pronounce the names for them and not worry about, they don't have to worry about doing it right. It's always been something that I've enjoyed. One of the great things about traveling is listening to the way people talk around the world, and it's all wonderful, brilliant.
I lived in the UK for quite a long time, and so reading how you wrote the character of Buck Foy, who is a Scottish hobgoblin, and you can the way you've written him, you can hear the accent. The accent is thick and meaty, and it's right there, and you can hear him speaking. And but I guess if you haven't come across that kind of accent before, you've then got this section at the front that you can refer to and get an idea in your head of how Buck sounds, which is so essential to the character. Like, I can't even imagine Buck Foy without a Scottish accent now. It just doesn't work.
Right. Yeah. That was hopefully what I was trying to accomplish there, is to get enough of the flavor of the language across to where you hear him very, vibrantly in your head, I guess you hear him absolutely in your head if you're listening to the audiobook. But that's what I was into, and it's part of the joy of researching anything. And I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Glasgow and spend 10 days there and just kind of absorb the language as I was going. And I was also very fortunate that I have a Ouija friend who lives here in Ottawa, and he was able to help me out with a lot of the Scots as well. So all props to him. I give him a shout out in the acknowledgements. His name's Stu. I got a question for you.
Yeah, man.
This is one of the things that we both write stuff that is sort of, it's action packed. It moves at a good pace, all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of humor in it as well. I found myself chuckling more than once while I was reading your stuff. It was a lot of fun. So, but at the same time, we don't shy away. One of the things I appreciated about your book a lot is that you don't shy away from tackling social stuff at the same time as you're providing this, really, really good story. So sometimes you run across topics and, you'd like to learn more about it, but you don't want to read a lengthy essay, Atlantic or so. So what I really like is that you have tackled a couple of different issues, like the way that foster care maybe abandons some kids and messes with them, and we're not taking the best care of kids that we possibly could sometimes in the foster care system. And another thing that you address often was the problem of homelessness, specifically in LA, but it applies everywhere. And I was wondering, where did, why did you land on those particular issues to address? Is that something that's near and dear to your heart for a particular reason, or what would you like to see happen? Is that something that you continue in the series and so on?
It's an interesting question. I never set out, when I started writing this series, I never set out with a kind of laundry list of topics that I wanted to address. These are topics that I stumbled on as I was writing the book. I think if you're going to set a story in modern day LA, sooner or later you're going to have to address the kind of the horrific homelessness that is in that city. With the foster system, for those who haven't read the book, The Girl Who Could Move Shit with Her Mind, right there, the lead villain, whose name is Jake, has a background as a foster kid, which I didn't realize when I first met him and started writing him. It was something that kind of got revealed to me as I explored his personality and his background and where he came from. And I have a background as a journalist, and one of the things that I was taught how to do by many fantastic editors over the years is how to express complex issues in a simple way and in a way in a sort of short space on the page. So that's something that I could kind of bring to the fore here. Like something like the foster care system in the States, as you say, could be the subject of a 10,000-word article in the Atlantic. It's a gigantic topic. But I didn't want it to get in the way of the story, especially a story as fast-paced and as humorous as The Girl Who Could Move Shit with Her Mind. So I kind of relied a little bit on that journalism training to be able to kind of express the key points and keep the narrative moving. And again, it's not something that I knew I was going to have to do when I started. I ended up having to do a lot of research about the foster care system and how the foster care laws differ from state to state. But readers seem to have responded to it, so I think it came across as I intended.
And that's the way I think you can handle a lot of these sort of meatier issues when they are still a part of your fantasy or your sci-fi. I was tackling human trafficking in Ink and Sigil, and it's so painful what is happening today with human trafficking. But to address it head on, because it's so painful, a lot of people just, I don't want to look at that, I don't want to deal with that. But what I did is I made this about fae trafficking, trafficking fairies, and by just having that tiny little bit of remove from a horrific situation, then it's now part of the story, and it's not necessarily an essay anymore. It's a thing where we can examine these issues and not be smacked so horrifically necessarily with the fact of it that makes you want to turn away. Instead, you continue to read and find out more about it. And so hopefully it educates people while entertaining them, and that's kind of the way I like to approach those things. And I found that your integration of the foster care system and the homelessness was also a great way to approach that. And it makes me I'm interested in solutions to homelessness because it is everywhere, and I keep seeing articles about experiments and people trying to do things, and so I'm applauded for that. I really appreciate it.
Cheers, man. Let me turn the question back on you, though. I mean, the fae trafficking is a particularly interesting part of the world you created. Did you know you were going to deal with that going in, or was it something that you kind of stumbled across and wanted to explore more as you were writing?
Well, I knew going in that was something that I was going to address, and that basically that what happened to Buck Foy and Cowslip and others was a way to examine the human trafficking issue without being so horrifically focused on what actually happens to people, because it can be just viscerally horrifying. So I was trying to make it a little bit more palatable by doing it that way. And then, of course, in the back of the book, I might here's some resources that you can check out if you're interested in finding out more and things that we can do going forward. And it's just to bring awareness to an issue and maybe get some folks involved. But at the same time, they're there for a story, so you're giving them that too. So it's a cool thing that fiction allows us to do that, to sort of in a way educate a little bit, just a tiny bit, and because of course people need to do their own thing. At the same time, you're serving your purpose as an author. So it's great.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So we have a couple of questions popped up by those in the chat. Thank you very much for those. Reminder, if you do want to ask a question, there's a little button at the bottom that says conveniently ask a question. So shall we tackle a couple of those, Kevin?
Oh yeah, sure. And please, you guys go ahead and ask more down there at the bottom using that little question button. First one with 4 votes is asking, I think, about you. Who decides when you need a pseudonym? Why and how do you come up with a name? Man,
okay. I can't speak for every author with a pseudonym here. I can only speak for me. I think everyone's experience was different. The decision to use Jackson Ford is my pseudonym. As I said at the start, the real name is Rob Buffard. But the decision to use that pseudonym, Jackson Ford, came about when we were working on the Frost Files series, which is my current series. And it was very different to everything I'd come before, which was far more traditional sci-fi. And my publisher and my agent kind of came to me and said, look, it's a new genre, and people are going to get way more excited about the first book from this new persona than they will about the 5th Rob Buffard book. So how about it? And I was a bit resistant to it at first. I can be a bit of an asshole that way sometimes. So I kind of hemmed and hawed and eventually went, oh, fine, I guess I'll do it. And the one thing they said was, well, we're not going to suggest a name. You got to come up with a name. So I came up with the name Jackson Ford. I won't go into the exact reasons why I picked that name. They're numerous and way too boring to go into here, but I will say that at least I could get a pseudonym that sounded cool. And Jackson Ford, if I do say so myself, is a pretty cool fucking name. So I hope that answers the question. I think there are a lot of authors that adopt a pseudonym a little more willingly than I did. I took a little bit more convincing, but readers have responded. I think it's worked out well. So Kevin, there's a question for you here as well. Kevin, I had stumbled on Ink and Sigil 2 days ago and cannot put it down. Fantasy has never been in my reading wheelhouse, but now I may be hooked. Why am I not surprised? Question, where did your ear for dialogue come from?
Oh, gosh. It might be from reading a whole bunch of fantasy and stuff when I was a kid. I think that I just read a lot. I was actually, everybody else is outside, not inside reading. Partially the reason I didn't want to be outside is I grew up in Arizona and it was dang hot, and I didn't want to go outside. It was nicer inside. So I'm going to read here, and I read through a whole bunch of different series. I would find an author I liked and then read everything that they had written. A lot of Alan D. Foster, and he was pretty darn good with his dialogue as well. And Alan D. Foster at this point has written over 120 books. I mean, dang. Guy's been around, and he wrote both sci-fi and fantasy. So I enjoyed his stuff a lot. Then, of course, Harry Harrison used to write some very humorous sci-fi, the Stainless Steel Rat series. That's really older stuff. Robert Asprin, Douglas Adams, for crying out loud. I love how comedic he was with the way he would, present his dialogue, and just breaking things up, and the pacing of it and the delivery was a key part of the humor a lot of times, and I recognize that. So maybe that was it. I'm not sure, but thank you so much for picking up Ink and Sigil and giving me a try. I really appreciate it. That's awesome. Yeah, do you have something about dialogue you'd like to add?
Not about dialogue, but I just had a sort of supplementary question. Did you ever read Alan Dean Foster's his novelization of the Alien movies? Did you ever read that one?
I never did. I never read like his novelizations. I was always reading his original stuff. But did you? I mean, did you read it? What did you think?
That was one of the key books of my childhood, man. The key trilogies. Like he did this novelization of the Alien movies that was just phenomenal. Like he just nailed it, and you see why this guy is the king of tie-in novelizations and just one of the best writers we've ever had. He's just incredible. Yeah,
I mean, he did. He's done Star Wars, of course, and he's done. I think he's done a lot of other IPs as well. Too many for me to list. Like if you go to a Wikipedia article and look at his bibliography, you will see just wow, he's done so much stuff. But like he had a series of fantasy / sci-fi series called the Pip and Flinks novels, and there's a redheaded kid who has like a psychic bond with a flying dragon snake thing, and they get in lots of adventures, and that is where the the inspiration, honestly, for Atticus and Hearne came from. You got a redheaded guy and an animal that he's bonded with, having adventures. And there you go. I can't stress how much that was formative for me, and I really appreciate his work. I got to meet him once at Phoenix Comic-Con, and it was an honor. It was great. So.
For those of you who haven't read Kevin's books, you're going to do it, and you're going to encounter Oberon, the Irish Wolfhound, who is going to become your favorite character of all time. Oberon is the best.
Oh, thank you. It's ironic that you say that, though, because I spend so much more time on every other character. You know what I mean? Thinking about their growth and their, there's a lot of thinking that goes into everybody else and how they grow. But Oberon is this, it's a flat character. Speaking, he doesn't really have a character arc. He always likes poodles and sausages, So, but he's the most lovable guy. So yeah, thank you. There's a cool question here about you about LA actually for you. It says, how has it been using LA as a setting versus having to do all new world building?
Man, it's been easier on the one hand because I don't have to do world building. Los Angeles exists. It's a place. If I talk about something happening on the freeways of Los Angeles, people know what a freeway is. They know what a car is. They know what traffic jams are. I don't have to explain that, which on the one hand is great. But on the other, it's been quite tricky because, I'm not from Los Angeles. I've spent quite a bit of time there, but I don't live there. I don't live in the United States. And if I'm going to write about a place in another country that actually exists, it behooves me to get things right and to make it believable. So, I might not be inventing the world from scratch and having to do that work, but I'm having to do a lot of research work and spend a hell of a lot of time on Google Maps. I basically live on Google Maps, just trying to get a sense of, the structure of the city streets and which shops are where and where the freeways go and what's the difference between two different areas, because I want someone who lives in LA to be able to pick up these books, read them and go, this sounds like the city I live in. When I do get that comment from reviews that come out of the books, that's one of the best things anyone can tell me, because that means I've done my job. Kevin, I'm sure this is something that you've come across as well. You obviously have a vastly complex world, but you do set your books in real world places. Like, for example, A Paper and Blood is set in the Australian outback. So how do you deal with this?
Oh, well, actually, same way you were saying. I agree with everything you say there. If you can't get to the place yourself, then Google Maps is your friend. I try to make it as accurate as possible, because a lot of the things that's happening, they're so fantastical, sort of batshit crazy, that you need something real to anchor all the batshit to. And then all of the magic and stuff goes down a little bit easier, because at least this is real. We can actually go and visit these restaurants or locations that are mentioned. So I was fortunate enough to get to go to Glasgow to research ink and sigil. And I had planned to go to Australia for the research of Paper and the Blood, because I got an invitation to a convention out there. So the convention was going to fly me out, to Australia. So I was like, woohoo! I could just stay a little bit longer and do my research while I'm there. But that was in April of 2020, and we all know what happened. And there was no travel anywhere, and still isn't in a lot of ways. So I couldn't go to Australia. But for this was not going to be a thing where Google Maps was really going to be helpful, because a lot of the action had to take place outside of the city. And I got super fortunate because a couple of authors who were local in Melbourne agreed to help me out. Amy Kaufman, who is a super duper bestseller with Jay Kristoff. She is in Melbourne, and she happens to love the Iron Druid Chronicles, believe it or not, and which blows me away. And she was like, I'll help. And so she went out to the bush for me in the Dandenong Ranges. She took a hike, and she was doing all these videos, all narrated in her very charming accent. And I loved it, and it was perfect. It's what I needed. There's no way I could have got the information that I needed to describe things well if she hadn't done that. And because she's a writer, she knew what I needed. What does it smell like here? What do I hear? What's the ambient noise? all of those little details that are key to understanding a place and being in it, and so that you can take your readers there, viscerally, virtually. No, what's the word I'm looking for? It's another V word, of course. Vicariously.
Vicariously. That's it. Yeah. And Amy doing that, she's actually putting her life on the line for your books there, because this is Australia. Everything wants to kill you. So I'm quite impressed, man. She must really love the series.
She does, but she actually put that part in one of her videos. She's like, all right, so there's some stuff over here. She's pointing, the camera into some bush. She's like, but I'm not going to go any further because the brown snakes are there and they could kill me. So I'm done. And, and she moved on there. She also took some pictures of, still pictures of Heel Hotel for me. So that is described accurately. Then Nicole Hayes is another IA author, and she took videos and photos for me of a neighborhood called Glen Waverly. And that's where I discovered where a couple of characters are going to be living. So that's, I couldn't have done it without them, or I suppose I could have done it, but it wouldn't have been the same book, And I'm very grateful to them for their help. It was fantastic of them to do that. And so hopefully it came across. People in Australia who are reading it will recognize everything.
It's interesting you bring up the idea of you can't do it without that kind of on the ground help. I find that as well, even with LA, which is material and which is readily accessible. I still have a friend in Los Angeles, Alicia Grasso, who's a journalist down there. I send her the manuscript and get her to check it over and tell me where I've screwed up royally, which is always like 20 or 30 times throughout the book. And I think you need that. If you're writing about a real world place, you have to, if you can't get there yourself, you've got to have someone who is there for you.
Absolutely. It's so vital. I had another experience like that where I was writing about some stuff in Germany and also Poland and so on, and I couldn't get everywhere, and I needed people in those countries to help out. Fortunately, Twitter is fantastic. Social media in general, people are like, oh, sure, I live there. I'd be happy to help you out with something like that. And so it's very cool how social media has made some of that easier than it used to be, to find somebody willing to help you out in that regard. So that's a really cool thing. I like that a lot. So by the way, your map in the front of the book, who did that? I loved it. It was funny. He's got a map in LA, but then it's written, little notes all over it.
Yeah, so I wanted a map. I've always wanted a map in my books, and I've never really had an excuse to do one. So now I did, and I didn't just want a map of Los Angeles. I wanted something that captured kind of the spirit of the book, and the spirit of the book was, well, it'll be a map that Tegan, my lead character, has scribbled over and made notes on. And hang on, you know what? Pictures, 1,000 words. I can actually just bloody show you what we're talking about. Hold on.
Yeah.
So, fantastic. Oh god, if you can see past the sun. There you go. So it's a map of Los Angeles, and it's got all sorts of scribbles over and names of Tegan's favorite restaurants. And although I kind of put that map together, my handwriting is appalling. I couldn't do it myself. So my wife, Nicole, who has actually just entered the chat, hi, babe, she very generously offered her handwriting. So when you see Tegan's maps at the front of the book, that is my wife, Nicole's handwriting. She's doing all the hard work there. I'm just telling her what to write. So, yeah, like I said, I'd never had a map. I wanted one, and God damn it, we got one.
That's awesome. I love it. But by the way, they were advertising this on this whole event online. We're going to talk about writing sweary books.
Yes.
And I suppose we should do that maybe, so nobody feels that we're cheating them or something. So do you find that writing lots of sweary stuff is absolutely necessary or fun, or just entertaining? Do you have a purpose behind it?
It's absolutely necessary. It's the only way you can get published these days is to have lots of swear words. That's really the secret to being a professional author, is to swear a lot.
Yeah.
It just in this book, it just felt natural. It just felt like my character would be a potty mouth, and she was a potty mouth even before my publisher suggested the title of The Girl Who Could Move Shit With Her Mind. That wasn't even my idea. I loved the idea, but I can't claim credit for it. No, she was just a naturally sweary person, and she didn't give a fuck, and she had absolutely no filter. That's just who she was. And now I can't even imagine writing any of the series without copious swear words. It's very freeing. I generally believe that, with the exception of racial and sexual slurs, which are awful, no word should be taboo. And I think the idea that some words are taboo is crazy to me in 2021 when we have so many other horrendous things to worry about. So yeah, I mean, I didn't, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe there was any swearing in your current book. Is it something that you've included in the past?
There is. I mean, well,
There is,
mostly it's creative stuff. I mean, there's the yoga assholes.
Oh yes, yeah.
There's all kinds of things in there where it's a little bit more creative about how they're going to do something to you, and it involves uncomfortable body parts being violated, whatever, but all of it's sort of said in not a very serious manner, right? It's not really threats, but one of those hyperbolic kind of situations where, instead of saying, well, I'm going to kill you or something like that for doing that to me, then people are saying something else they're going to do to you instead. And I kind of have fun being creative, at times with the swearing, instead of using the same few words. And those same few words are great, and those get used too. I really enjoy the more creative kinds of swearing that maybe Buck Foy would do, and the suggestions that he would give to. Well, he also likes to do stuff like make your mom jokes, like incredibly immature stuff. But, kind of throw them at Al, who thought, well, he's 63 and I'm way past this. Nobody's going to say those to me anymore. But now Buck Foy is going to bring him, whenever he feels like it. And so that's been a lot of fun to me too.
Here's a strange thought though. Swearing has been around. Swearing in the current sort of modern form has been around for decades, if not hundreds of years. People have always had curse words, but somehow they never get old. As long as you're not using them to excess, there's something about them that's always funny and always kind of attractive and always kind of sparks a particular reaction in the reader. And I can't think of any other sort of subset of words that have endured for that long and endured consistently across cultures.
Yeah, there was a really interesting, I don't know if you managed to catch it, but there was an interesting series on Netflix about swearing and how they've done some research about how it actually affects the brain chemistry and things like that when you swear. And that especially if you're working out or exercising or something like that and you curse as you're doing it, it gives you a little boost of energy somehow. Very interesting but bizarre kind of stuff. The connection between language and your physicality, and I think that's actually one of the reasons I'm so into linguistics. Period, is that it really reveals a lot about somebody's character. Do they swear or not? Do they even use contractions or not? Do they? And which swear words are they okay with? What is it? And then how frequently do they use it? What do they? And all of these things are revealing something about who they are as a person and where they came from, etc. And so I do pay attention to people and how they speak for that reason. So just to make them a little bit more real as characters. Yeah.
So we've got a couple of questions in the chat. Reminder, you can hit the ask a question button at the bottom and pop your own question up there. Joe's asked, at what point do you decide on the name for a book? Before you start, or does it reveal itself to you as you write? What do you think, Kevin?
I usually think about it before I begin, but it has been suggested to me by some of the outlining I'm doing sometimes. The first book, Hounded, we had I had a little bit of problems coming up with the name for it for a while, but then I realized that it wound up being a book where it had Hounded because his best buddy was an Irish wolfhound, but also he was being pursued by Angus Og, this god who wanted to kill him. And so he was being hounded by not just Angus Og, but all of his minions. And therefore, it worked in that regard too. So that I tried to make one-word titles from there on for the Iron Druid Chronicles that had some relevance to the action of the novel, and hopefully could be taken in more than one way. Then, of course, we get into foreign translations, that becomes really interesting. And because they don't necessarily always have that same word and they can't do the same thing. But one of the most interesting translation things I came up with, or ran across, I should say, was the Polish translations for the Iron Druid Chronicles. The translator was like, well, since you're trying to do like double meanings to all of your titles, I can kind of do that in Polish, but it's going to take more than one word. And so she explained every time that what she was doing for the translations and how culturally these all had layers of meaning to them. So it related to my book, but it also harkened something else in Polish culture. And I was like, this is awesome, cool. So yeah, I think that the title thing is a complex one. And this, your titles, of course, are very evocative and tell a lot about what's happening in the story. We know all about your character a little bit there from the very first one. But then consistency with it, the branding, using the word shit in there is fantastic as well. So, I mean, how did that, come along? Do you wrestle with those, not to say shitty titles, but I mean, do you have to wrestle now with what you're, doing from book to book because of that?
You broke up a little there, Kevin. Could you ask that last question again?
Sorry about that. Dang internet. I was going to ask, the titles for your books, the Frost Files, are they kind of tough to work with because of, the swearing that's on it now and how you've got to kind of walk the fine line between humorous and, oh my God, that's vulgar?
I've never encountered that. I think the word shit has become so commonplace and so kind of understood that no one really gives a shit. And I also have the benefit that my publisher is really, really good at coming up with titles, and I am not. My big Achilles heel as a writer is my titles suck. I have never been good at coming up with titles. It's just a big blind spot. And my publisher is far better, and they suggested, Anna Jackson, who was my editor at the time, suggested The Girl Who Could Move Shit With Her Mind. And it was such a perfect summation of not just the story of the novel, but the voice of the novel and the voice of the series, that I was like, yes, automatic yes. That's exactly what I want to do. And I kind of got into the spirit of it. The third book, which is Eye of the Shitstorm, which is this one right here, a new one, book plug. I originally suggested the title of that to be Giant Shitstorm of Doom, which I quite liked. But given that it came out at the start of COVID, they kind of said, you know what? Things are a little bit crazy at the moment. Anyway, maybe we should make things slightly more lighthearted, get a bit more of a lighthearted tone. So it's like, fine. But no, I haven't found it difficult to work with at all. I've embraced it. Like, I'm now the dude with sweary titles, and I'm very happy with that. I like the fact that my titles pop at you from a bookstore, and that, as far as I know, there's no one else, certainly in the fiction world, doing this kind of thing with titles and including swear words in their titles. If you see that happening, I want it noted that I started the trend.
Okay, yeah, they do pop out for sure. That's great stuff. And let's see here. We have apparently I should address something. Somebody in the chat said, "Are you going to get a visual on me again?" If I have dropped out of your feed visually, I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening there. I can still see myself. I can still see Robin, or Jackson and here just fine. So yeah, that I apologize. I wish I could fix it.
You know what? We can still hear you perfectly, so it's all good. The only downside is we don't get your magnificent beard. Someone in the chat has said, someone named Chris has said, someone should tell Patrick Rothfuss his beard looks far better on you, Kevin. And I'd agree with that, actually.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, Patrick has the whole thing on his neck and stuff like that. He's really grown it out fully all over the place, and I can't do that myself. I wouldn't be able to stand it. Like it would just be too itchy and stuff. So I got to give kudos to Patrick for that. That's amazing. And by the way, if you've never seen it in person, it is a glorious thing. It's quite the edifice, and all lovely combed, oiled, and all that good stuff. It's great. But thank you so kindly. I appreciate it. It's gotten very, very long during the pandemic, and I haven't trimmed it very much. So yeah. It's getting down to Gandalf length here soon, and so before you know it, I'll have my wizard hat and be ready to go.
You see, I'm very jealous. I tried to grow a beard during the pandemic, but it only grew on one side. This side was completely bald. And after a while, I looked at this and went, I look fucking stupid. This was a terrible idea. This is kind of the most facial hair I can muster.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, if I back when I had hair. I tried to grow it long, and it just did not work for me. It didn't look good at all. So I said, I'm better with short hair, and now, of course, I'm better with no hair. So it's all good.
Yeah,
So,
if you came for learned chat about the world of publishing and science fiction, congratulations. We're talking about facial hair now. This is just where we are.
yeah. And if you guys do have some questions for us, please, go ahead and throw them on up there. We're just kind of rapping about this. I was going to ask you a little bit more about the girl who could move shit with her mind.
Yeah, man.
And I mean, the very first chapter, the very first few pages is just some of the most fantastic, action, edge of your seat kind of stuff that I've seen. And at one point, as they're falling, literally edge of your seat. And so I was fascinated by that. I mean, was that it sounded like almost like a comic book, sequence. I could kind of visualize the whole thing as was going down. Are you into comics at all? Do you have you read them, and has that influenced your writing at all?
Weirdly, I'm not a big comics guy, and I'm especially not a big superhero comics guy. I tried to get into it for quite a while, but the problem is the storylines in comics, and superhero comics in particular, are often so convoluted and so full of different timelines and multiple universes and dead characters coming back to life 1,000 times that after a while I just said, you know what, this is not for me. I respect what comic artists and comic writers are trying to do with the medium, but this is really not for me. There are a few series that I enjoy. I like Why the Last Man and Saga, both of which are just phenomenal. But yeah, I mean, comic books weren't really the big influence for me here. There's a comment in the chat says multiple X-Men universes makes it harder to keep up. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, I was more influenced by kind of classic action movies. That's kind of where my head is at. I grew up in the 90s, and in South Africa in the 90s, Hollywood action movies were a big thing. We called them skop, skit, and donna, which essentially means shoot, punch, and hit movies. So we got a lot of those. And the more violent and gruesome and insane and chaotic, the better. And that's kind of where I draw the inspiration for that from. I like the fact that I can kind of paint this picture right at the very start of the book of just this wild situation that you can see in front of you. It is interesting that you mentioned comics, though. I got a similar feeling reading your books. Your books are very visual in the sense that they kind of, the words weave a very rich tapestry in the reader's brain, or certainly in my brain. Are you a comics person at all? Yeah.
Well, I used to be more than I am now. As somebody commented, when you have too many X-Men universes, whatever, there was so much to keep up with, and I ultimately couldn't keep up with. And so I stopped reading them because I was moving and things like that, and I'm just like, you know what, I got to stop. So I used to read the Marvel stuff, and then I really got into Image Comics. One of the things that comics did for me was kind of teach me how to do fight scenes and kind of how to think of them, the ebb and flow, how things go back and forth, how you could also start looking at scenes or fight scenes specifically from different angles, and more things get revealed. So it basically kind of trained my head to think about fight scenes in comics fashion, and perhaps that helped me write fight scenes once I had to write them for novels. So yeah, that's kind of what I think. I do think in sort of comic panels in my head as I'm composing fight scenes, and I think that's comics have done for me. So yeah, Stacy.
Yeah,
no whiskey today. I think so, Stacy. Stacy in the chat here.
Man, we should have done that. We should have gone Sons Over the Yardarm somewhere. Let's grab a wee dram. I can't believe we didn't think of that.
Yeah, I've got some Angel's Envy bourbon that I just picked up a couple of days ago that I was just over the moon about, and I haven't opened yet.
Nice.
It's really, really good. I don't know if you're a bourbon fan or not. Do you love your bourbon? Okay.
Yeah,
so
100%.
If you get a chance to get a hold of Angel's Envy bourbon, not their rye, you get the bourbon. It's fantastic, good stuff. So,
where is it from? Do you know?
Oh yeah, it's Kentucky. The thing is their rye is more widely distributed, and finding their bourbon is really iffy. It's tough even in the States, some places, to get it. So the fact that I got it at the LCBO here, I got the last bottle. It was all alone on a shelf, and there was a guy sitting there watching it. That didn't take long. It sold out almost instantly. People heard we had it, and it was gone. So if you were able to catch a bottle somewhere up there in BC, that would be a score. So
I'll look for it, man. I like a good bourbon. The one that I had most recently that I really loved was called Two Bar out of Seattle.
Cuba.
Yeah, like two and then BAR, so Two Bar. This most amazing, like caramelly rich, thick, delicious bourbon. It was so good. I don't drink a ton of bourbon these days. I'm more of a Scotch guy. I've got a real weakness for like the Islay malts. It's a real expensive weakness. That's kind of where my book advances go, just buying whiskey.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you do much whiskey, or is it mostly bourbon?
I do a little bit of whiskey here, too. Yeah. I've originally, of course, Irish stuff, but I've been trying to get into some of the stuff from Scotland a little bit more. My particular palate is not a huge fan of the Islay stuff, but I tend to like Highlands and Speysides because they're closer to the Irish. You know what I mean? They have some of the same flavor profiles. So that's kind of where I end up going for a lot of that stuff. And then, love the bourbon as well. And Scotland is, well, a lot of places now, but Scotland is really into gin. And there's a ton of new gin distilleries coming up. And if you start a distillery, you start out with gin because it's a lot faster to make and start bringing in some revenue. And then meanwhile, you can also start whiskey and let that age for 10 years or whatever until you can actually start making money. So gin is a way for people who want to get into whiskey. They can start making money almost instantly. So I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing so much of it. And of course, the laws have changed to favor it as well. So we got a lot more craft distilleries now. It's great.
It's funny you mention gin and how we're seeing so many of them now. My agent, Ed Wilson, is a big fan, and he had his 40th birthday recently, so I wanted to send him something. And I found this gin. Don't ask me what it's called. I can't remember. But I found this gin from Germany. And I thought, okay, this is something I've really got to just have him try this out and let me know what he thinks. And he said it was really good. So I think you're getting a bunch of gins, not just from Scotland, but from everywhere these days. You're getting some good stuff. Yeah,
Canada makes... actually, Victoria, where we're at, they're making Empress gin, and that stuff is fantastic. It's an indigo gin that changes color when you add tonic to it, because it has I need to say this carefully, butterfly pea flower extract. If you just say butterfly pea, then people don't realize it's PEA. and so, it's definitely butterfly pea flower extract, and so that particular extract gives it indigo color, and then it will change to this very rich sort of lavender/magenta kind of thing going on in your glass as you're drinking it. It's fantastic.
I think we found the idea for your next series here, because you already have you've got a series that deals with the elements, the Android series, and you've got ink and sigil and paper and blood, which of course deal with ink and paper and sigils. But I think the time is right for a booze sorcerer, a booze wizard series. Can you do that for us, Kevin? Can you pull that off?
Oh, you never know. I might be able to. We'll have to see. Yeah, I have to think about how that would work.
I'd read the hell out of that. Just saying.
Yeah, it sounds a lot of fun, right? Somebody here saying they would like some immortality. Yeah. Hey, me too, man.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Forget your ivermectin to cure you of COVID. Just hook us up some immortality, please.
Yeah, read headlines about that stuff is kind of mind blowing sometimes. But I'm gonna ask you. First of all, I have to go grab the rest of these books of yours about Tegan, and I was wondering, do we kind of hang on to the gang? Do we hang on to Paul and? Love your side characters there too. Annie and so on and so forth. Or do they return in the second novel?
They return.
They
return.
Okay.
I refuse to say more than that. No spoilers.
Okay.
But I can confirm that at least at the start of the second novel, they are all back. At the start.
Oh wow. That's great. I enjoy all of the stuff on the side too, and I actually wanted to go to that restaurant you were talking about that had the plum granita. Oh, that sounded really good. Is that a real restaurant, by the way? Or...
It is a real restaurant. Kevin's referring to a place called En Naka, which is a restaurant run by a chef called Nikki Nakayama in Los Angeles. Very, very high class. I think multiple Michelin stars. And although I have sadly never been, I really want to go. It is a real place. There was a documentary about it on Netflix a while back. She's doing some phenomenal stuff. This is the one thing everybody overlooks about Los Angeles. You know, people think LA, it's about Hollywood and the movies and Universal Studios and all of that. And what nobody seems to realize is that LA has just the most fantastic food culture and some of the best food in the world, especially if you're talking about something like Mexican food. I mean, the tacos in LA, I knew we'd circle back to tacos eventually, but the tacos in Los Angeles are some of the best I've ever had. They are out of this world.
Yes, I'm sure that is true. That I haven't actually had tacos in LA yet. I've had them, fish tacos down in San Diego, which have been fantastic. Anything in the Southwest, you're going to have a good time with the tacos out there. When I moved up here to Canada at first, I had a difficult time finding tacos that were up to par. But I finally found a place that's run by some U.S. immigrants, and they are they know what they're doing. So I'm very happy about that. The tacos are awesome. One of the greatest foods. Put anything
100%.
Yeah.
You should come to Vancouver sometime, when COVID is no longer a thing, because weirdly, we have an amazing taco scene here. I don't know what it is. I don't know how we've ended up with this many Mexican immigrants cooking fantastic tacos, but we have. And some of the best tacos I've ever had have been in Vancouver and Canada.
All right. Yeah. Well, Vancouver has an amazing food scene, period. Pick a scene, and Vancouver's got some of that going on there. It's a great town. I've only been there a couple of times, but each time I went, amazing experiences, and would love to come back. And when travel is a thing again, I would definitely do that. I'm kind of wanting to get across Canada and see all the stuff in the middle, and then I'd like to get the coast and then head down to Seattle. I like hockey. And would like to see a Seattle Kraken game. So, and I've got a bunch of friends in Seattle that I'd like to visit. So that's kind of this is one of the road trips that I plan that I can't take right now. So, but maybe we'll be able to, get on the road.
So we've got about 10 minutes left in this. Thank you, everybody who's asked questions so far. Again, if there is a burning question you want to ask, hit the ask a question button at the bottom. Pop one in there for us. We do have a couple of quick fire questions that we've kind of devised for each other, just to wrap things up. Do you want to hit those, Kevin?
Oh yeah. Are you ready for me to fire these at you?
Let me do you first. Let me fire the questions at you first. Okay. You ready to go?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
All right, let's do it. So, first question: favorite Rush album?
2112. Yeah, Temples the Syrinx. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Favorite Star Wars character?
Enfys Nest. She's a minor character that shows up in Solo, and she's so fascinating. We only see a little bit of her, but she winds up like she's somebody who's running supplies to the rebels sort of in the beginning of the rebellion, and I wanted to know more about her. And give me more Enfys Nest, please. I would love to see more of her anywhere, any kind of stories, whether it's animated or written.
I'm so glad you explained who Enfys Nest was. I'm not a massive Star Wars guy, so I was thinking, Enfys Nest, who is this person? But she sounds pretty rad.
She's amazing.
Right. Which taco is the best taco? This relates back to what we were just talking about.
Well, I think it is always the one that you're about to eat. Like sort of a Zen moment thing. Be in the present. Whatever taco you have in front of you, that is a blessing, and therefore it is the best taco at that moment, right? So, yeah.
Very, very, very philosophical answer. I like it.
Yeah.
What is the best book you've read lately besides The Girl Who Can Move Shit with Her Mind?
Oh, yeah. Well, your book was amazing. Yes, absolutely. Let's see. Let's do The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. If you are looking for a really good epic fantasy with some just fantastic world building and characters you really care about. I can't recommend it enough. And again, that's The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. The sequel, the second book of that series, is coming out, I believe, a little bit later this year. They already have ARCs of it, so I'm excited.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but I've been hearing a lot of good things about it. This is another Orbit book, the same imprint that Kevin and I are on, and yeah, it's been getting a lot of hype. So cool, I will definitely check that out. And so, where do you most want to travel when traveling is a thing again? In the distant future.
I've never been to Iceland, and I would love to go to Iceland and check it out. Kind of in the summer. See all the waterfalls, all the volcanic rocks and goodies like that. I've written about it a little bit, but I would love to see it in person. And they also have a very interesting museum there that I would like to visit too. It is a museum of the penis, and
I was about to say, yep.
Yeah, that is probably the most interestingly named or themed museum in the world. But they have a pair of necro pants there, and that I got to see in person. So that's it's basically pants made of penises, and so that I don't know where they got the supply, and I don't know if it was effective. It was supposed to be if you wore them, then the scrotums would fill with gold, and I don't know if it worked or not. But somebody had an idea and they ran with it.
And I bet someone has tested that as well. Like, put these on, no gold. God damn it.
They don't make these in my size.
Is the Iceland trip, is that somewhere you want to go just purely for vacation, for fun, or is it kind of laying the groundwork for a future book?
It's mostly for fun, but I might wind up being in a book too. But at this point, I'd love to just go see it for the nature stuff. I'd like to see puffins. There's so much I'd like to go experience there. So it's been kind of on my mind for quite some time. And of course, I would love to go back to Scotland. That would be as much enjoyment as I would also be researching more stuff for another Ink and Sigil book. So how about you? You ready to do some?
Let's do it, man.
All right, here we go. So what's your favorite Nas album?
So the classic Nas album is Illmatic, which in my opinion is the best album ever created of any genre. But my personal favorite, because this is how I still got into Nas, is called Stillmatic. It's like a fifth album. He attempted to recapture some of the magic of the first, and I heard it when I was first getting into rap. And so, that's kind of my touchstone when it comes to Nas. It's not his best, but it's my favorite.
Oh, very nice. Very cool. I'll have to check it out. In the Marvel TV world, WandaVision or Loki?
Loki, straight up. WandaVision was cool. Loki was transcendent. It did some wild shit, man. It's such a cool series.
Awesome, man. Very cool. Which taco is the best taco? I got to ask you that.
Your answer was very philosophical. Mine, I think, is slightly less so. I'm a fish taco guy. It's what I will order first. It's what I will order at the expense of everything else. I adore fish tacos. Can't get enough of them.
Awesome. Is there a specific kind of fish? Because I know sometimes there's different ones. But there's mahi tacos, and then sometimes they have like a grilled or a breaded, cod, halibut, or something like that in there.
I like tilapia tacos. I've had some really good ones here in Vancouver. They are they're out of this world. Okay,
fantastic. I got to try that if I get out there and get to hang out with you.
Yeah, man.
So what about the best book that you have read lately, besides Paper and Blood?
Besides Paper and Blood. So my friend Jeremy Schall, who is Australian, he recommended that I check out The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch. And, I've deluded myself for years that I wasn't a big fantasy person. Then a couple of years ago, I realized that I was reading lots and lots and lots of fantasy and kind of went, well, of course I'm a fantasy person. Stop being stupid. But I'd never checked out the Loch Lamora series. And I just got completely addicted to it. As far as I'm concerned, it's a future classic in the SFF world. It's just this phenomenal tale kind of set in an alternate universe Italy about gangs of thieves, and it is so freaking good. Scott Lynch, I don't think there's anyone else like him out there.
Yeah, he's fantastic. That is definitely an amazing book. If you guys haven't read that yet, give that a try for sure.
100%.
So if we do ever get to travel again soon, where do you both want to go?
So we have a miles credit card, and so every time we put stuff on it, which we do, put groceries and whatever on it. So the miles regularly kind of tick up and up, and they've been ticking up and up for a couple years now, to the point where they actually are worth something. And so we want to take a real trip, as and when we can travel again. We want to go to Peru and Brazil. We've never been to South America, and think it's time. And this would be just a trip for fun. I've got no intention of like setting a book down there or anything, but I really want to go to Brazil. I've wanted to go to Brazil since I was a kid. I can't believe that I didn't go before COVID. I'm kicking myself now. But yeah, South America. I really just want to go there.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. And I love Peruvian cuisine. I'd be there with you. I love ceviche of all kinds, and pisco sours are fantastic. I don't know if you've ever had one of those, but they're fantastic drinks.
Oof, yes, please. The more the merrier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we've actually wound up killing an hour here talking about all kinds of good stuff. So it's probably time for us to wrap things up. But remind everybody that at the bottom of your screen there should be a button to check out Rob's book, and if you feel like it, check out mine. And regardless, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with us.
Yeah, I'll second that. Thanks to everybody who asked questions, everybody who hung out in the chat. You guys are the freaking best. Don't forget to buy Kevin's book, and buy his series plural, full stop. There's nothing else quite like them.
And yes, please get into The Girl Who Could Move Shit with Her Mind, because that's going to be another series you're going to be quickly addicted to. And they're super fun reads, and they're pretty dang thick too. So I'm looking forward to starting the second one. See what happens next to Tegan.
Well, David in the chat has just said, I just bought the first shit book. David, thanks, brother. Really appreciate that. You're the best. Thank you again, just to everybody who hung out with us. Kevin, this was a blast. Thanks to you too for hanging out.
Thank you so much. And I don't know how this whole thing winds up ending at all, but hopefully it doesn't just sort of like cut. But I believe this is a replay option at the end, and maybe we could wind up seeing the video. I don't know.
I'm ending it now.
that voice is Nazia, who does press for all books. She's the person who put all of this together. So big round of applause, Nazia. You rock.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
y'all.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everybody. This was great. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Jack. See you.
See ya.